and welcome. This is Brandy Smith-Lyme, the Forbidden Library, and today it's reading day, but it's also make a note of all the books I've read day. Very important things. Very housekeeping. Very important. Hello everyone. Hello Rahel. Hello the Native Gamer. Hello Nimby. Hello Xnum. Welcome. It is Sunday. I hope you've had a wonderful weekend. I have had a really good one, actually, you know. It's been good. I saw a castle. I made some bread. What more do you need? Good times. Good life. And I've read a lot this week. Like a lot. So, we'll go through it. Let's, where should we even start? Let's do housekeeping. We don't even have a house. I know. It's surprising how much you have to do housekeeping for, even if you didn't have a house. You won't guess what I'm playing right now. Little Red and the Baba Yaga. So, I read some Teenage Mercenary. Go figure. That is unsurprising to everyone. Oh, bookworm is life. Bookworm is the life for me, and piracy. Definitely a good life. Thank you so much for being a member for so long, Boris. Appreciate it. Congrats on being an old-time member. Okay, so Teenage Mercenary. We love Teenage Mercenary. I've been reading a lot of it. So I read 160 to 180. I was 3 chapters off 180 to 200 before starting the stream. I was tempted to read the last 3 chapters before stream started. Yeah, old time member. Yeah. 9 months. It's not far off a year. Crazy. Shh. It's not time to read just yet. It's okay. Not quite time to read just yet. It's time for me to tell you what I have read. So let's do the audiobooks that I've been going through next, the novels. So 233. This one, I got this as an audiobook from my local library. Yay! So it's about a library. Not like my library. This is the Library of the Unwritten. It is a novel that I read as an audiobook because I like doing that. Highly recommend as a way to get your fix of fiction. And you can get it for free from your library. I read this for free. And it is by A.J. Hackworth. And it's about a library in hell full of unwritten books. And sometimes they get a little antsy, those books do. And they try to escape. Good stuff. Audio's books better than reading it. I don't know if I'd say better. Some of them I would say are. There's one called... there was a movie called Chaos Walking with Tom Holland. And the original book, the first book of that is called The Knife of Never Letting Go. And that was really cool because there's something in that book called The Noise. And it's basically like hearing thoughts. And the effects they put on that for the audiobook is really cool. And I imagine comparing that to reading probably doesn't have the same effect. So I would say in some cases it is, but most of the time your imagination, your own personal voice is going to still do any book justice. Directed by the guy who did The Bourne Identity. I've not actually watched it. I've read the first book and then half the second book. I was curious. If the narrator is good, it can add to the experience. I listen to books at work now since my eyes hurt from reading all day. The second thing I read, that's the reason I tend to get through audiobooks is because I've been listening to them at work. And it's so great because you can put on an audiobook and you can do something else. Like, I can't crochet and read a physical book because my hands are busy. I can't flip the pages. Audiobook, great, done. I don't have to worry about that. But I also read another Percy Jackson. We're getting through. I only have one more of that series now. Percy Jackson and the Battle of the Labyrinth. checking how we spell labyrinth. That's a novel. And that one is by Mr. Rick Riordan, and that's a series. 2025. Heck yeah. Skill issue. Potentially a skill issue. If I had a third arm, then that would fix my skill issue. So I think that's all the digital ones. And I've read some comic books again. So I've read Parliament of Rooks, issues 2 and 3. This is a really creepy book, actually. The art style's amazing. It's mostly black and white with some red and yellows when needed for artistic effect. Very pretty. I never want to see it in any other medium though, because it could be horrifying at times. And I don't need that in my life. I need to state this is issue 2. Like, I need to go up here and state that this is issue 1. And then I can just copy and paste the artists, because this isn't like the DC ones where they can switch artists for no reason. And this is 2025. And then 2, 3, 6. We read the third one. Oh. There we go. Don't go to the end of the spreadsheet. 3. That one is also a comic by the same people. It is also a series. It is also 2025. Next one, here's another comic. Day of the Dead Girl. 2, 3, 7. My supernatural murder mystery. Day of the Dead Girl. Issue 4, which is the final issue, apparently. Did I not write the rest of the Day of the Dead Girls down? There it is. Day of the Dead Girl. Cool. Wonderful. I just want to copy the artist because it makes my life easier. Comic. Also from this Genesis series, but I just finished it. So that's the comic books done. I have one more thing. Well, 3 more things. 3 more things technically. So I started playing a game recently in my free time called Wonder Stop, which is it's a kind of cozy game about a fighter who has pushed herself too hard and finds herself in a tea shop, and she serves tea now. In the book, you get given books to read. And they're quite chunky for in-game books. So I've counted them. So I've read 3 in-game books at the moment. So I'm putting them on my list. It's a good game. It's by the same creator as Stanley Parable. So the writing is very interesting. And it definitely comes out in some of these books, the kind of nonsensical silliness that he can do in his writing. So the first one is called Edge of a Bullet. A Dirk Warhard novel. We haven't used that. In-game media, Wonder Stop. Gam. I wouldn't call it a series. There's more Dirk Warhard novels. I've read 2 Dirk Warhard novels recently. Imagine playing games to read books. Future world. That's what I'm doing. 9. So we also had Professor Currency's Guide to Economics Volume 1. In-game media from Wonder Stop. Game 2025. Reminds me of how Darkness had a bunch of movies in it that you could watch in the entirety. That's wonderful. These are like, I'd probably put them on the same level as some of the Skyrim books where they have like a lot of text, more than you really need, and 90% of players probably aren't going to read them. And we have Fastest Bullet Alive, which is another Dirk Warhard novel. In-game media. Wonder Stop. Game. Lusty Argonian Maid, what a classic. Some of the best in-game media you will find. But the Wonder Stop books are about on par, I'd say, with Skyrim stuff. Maybe not quite on par with Lusty Argonian Maid, but what is, really. I mean, Fastest Bullet Alive had the guy shoot his gun so fast that it broke the time-space continuum. He willed his bullet to go so fast it went back in time. Truly the crime and punishment of our time. But that's that. So that brings us down to 160. There's 9 books. Am I forgetting anything? So we've done Library of the Written, Percy Jackson, 2 Parliament of the Rooks, and the Day of Dead Girl that I've read, Edge of the 3 Wonder Stops. Yes, that's correct. So let's update the books. Da 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 da. 9,762 go. We're making a dent. Slowly but surely. Now I'm going to down the rest. Maybe not down the rest of my tea. Drink the rest of some more of my tea, and then we shall read the book. That's a random lucky number. So, we had the stockade. So they've gotten to Treasure Island. Things have gone tits up pretty early on. It's a lucky number because it's an even number. Narahadel. Poor odd numbers. They're just sitting there being odd and unlucky. Boo. And things are tits up. A lot. We've got the crew have already kind of separated into 2. Silver's in charge of one side, the captain's in charge of the other. The other side managed to steal a lot of stuff off the boat before the other side managed it and built up a stockade. Silver's men attacked the stockade, but Captain Smollett and their team came out on top, though they have lost 2 people. And that's about where we're up to after just finishing the stockade. And apparently we're going on another sea adventure when we haven't even found the treasure. Treasure Doko. Treasure. I want treasure. Booty. But for now we'll have to read chapter 22. How I began my sea adventure. There was no return of the mutineers, not so much as another shot out of the woods. They had got their rations for the day, as the captain put it, and we had the place to ourselves, and a quiet time to overhaul the wounded and get dinner. Squire and I cooked outside in spite of the danger, and even outside we could hardly tell what we were at, for honour of the loud groans that reached us from the doctor's patients. Out of the 8 men who had fallen in the action, only 3 still breathed. That one of the pirates who had been shot at the loophole, Hunter, and Captain Smollett, and of these, the first 2 were as good as dead. The mutineer indeed died under the doctor's knife, and Hunter, do what we could, never recovered consciousness in this world. He lingered all day, breathing loudly like the old buccaneer at home in his apologetic fit. But the bones of his chest had been crushed by the blow, and his skull fractured in falling, and some time in the following night, without a sign or sound, he went to his master. As for the captain, his wounds were grievous indeed, but not dangerous. No organ fatally injured. Anderson's ball for it was Job that shot him first. Had broken his shoulder blade and touched the lung not badly. The second had only torn and displaced some muscles in the calf. He was sure to recover. the doctor said, but in the meantime, and for weeks to come, he must not walk nor move his arm, nor so much as speak when he could help it. My own accidental cut across the knuckles was a flea bite. Dr. Livesey patched it up with a plaster and pulled my ears for me into the bargain. I wonder if Captain will spend the rest of the book high on meds and hitting the doctor like in the movie. Maybe. After dinner, the squire and the doctor sat at the captain's side a while in consultation, and when they talked to their heart's content, it being a little past noon, the doctor took up his hat and pistols, girt on his cutlass, put the chart in his pocket, and, with a musket over his shoulder, crossed the palisade on the north side and set off briskly through the trees. Grey and I, sitting together at the far end of the blockhouse, to be out of earshot of our officers consulting, and Grey took his pipe out of his mouth, and fairly forgot to put it back again. So thunderstruck he was at this occurrence. "Why, in the name of Davy Jones," he said, "is Dr. Livesey mad?" "Why, no," says I. He's about the last of this crew for that, I take it." "Well, shipmate," said Grey, "mad he may be, but if he's not, you mark my words, I am." "I take it," replied I. "The doctor has his idea, and I am right. He's going now to see Ben Gunn." I was right. As appeared later, in the meantime, the house being stifling hot, and the little patch of sand inside the palisade ablaze with midday sun, I began to get another thought into my head, which was not by any means so right. What I began to do was to envy the doctor, walking in the cool shadow of the woods, with the birds about him and the pleasant smell of the pines, while I sat grilling, with my clothes stuck to the hot resin, and so much blood about me and so many poor dead bodies lying around that I took a disgust of the place that was almost as strong as fear. All the time I was washing out the blockhouse and then washing up the things from dinner, this disgust and envy kept growing stronger and stronger, till at last, being near a bread bag and no one then observing me, I took the first step towards my escapade and filled both pockets of my coat with biscuit. They did save the biscuits. Very important. And I was a fool, if you like, and certainly I was going to do a foolish, overbold act, but I was determined to do it with all the precautions in my power. These biscuits, should anything befall me, would keep me, at last, from starving till far on in the next day. The next thing I laid hold of was a brace of pistols, and as I already had a powder horn and bullets, I felt myself well supplied with arms. As for the same scheme I had in my head, it was not a bad one in itself. I was to go down the sandy spit that divides the anchorage on the east of the open sea, find the white rock I had observed last evening, and ascertain whether it was there or not that Ben Gunn had hidden his boat. Hydrate, I will do, Maxwell, I will do. I'm glad you did that, because I was starting to get worried that my tea was going to get too cold. Perfect timing. Thank you. Invisible water bottle. Invisible tea mug! It'll be water bottle next, so I just finished the tea. Invisible drink bottle, yes. Things. I wish I could make models for you guys to see. I do not have that expertise, though. A thing quite worth doing, as I still believe. But as I was certain I should not be allowed to leave the enclosure, my only plan was to take French leave and slip out when nobody was watching. French leave? Is that what they called skiving back then? Is that what they called running off? Deserting, maybe. Not quite deserting, I guess. French leave. And that was so bad a way of doing it as made the thing itself wrong. But I was only a boy, and I had made my mind up. Well, as things at last fell out, I found an admirable opportunity. The squire and Grey were busy helping the captain with his bandages. The coast was clear. I made a bolt for it over the stockade and into the thickest of the trees, and before my absence was observed, I was out of cry of my companions. Out of cry. Out of earshot. Out of yelling distance. Out of cry. I don't know. Cool phrase. Getting distracted. This was my second folly, far worse than the first, as I left but 2 sound men to guard the house. But like the first, I was a help towards saving all of us. I took my way straight for the east coast of the island, for I was determined to go down the seaside of the spit to avoid all chance of observation from the anchorage. It was already late in the afternoon, although still warm and sunny, as I continued to thread the tall woods. I could hear from far before me not only the continuous thunder of the surf, but a certain tossing of foliage and grinding of burrs, which showed me the sea breeze had set in higher than usual. Soon cool draughts of air began to reach me, and a few steps farther I came forth into the open borders of the grove, and saw the sea lying blue and sunny to the horizon, and the surf tumbling and tossing its foam along the beach. I have never seen the sea quite round Treasure Island. The sun might blaze overhead, the air might be without a breath, the surface smooth and blue, but still these great rollers would be running along all the external coast, thundering and thundering by day and night. And I scarce believe there is one spot on the island where a man would be out of earshot of their noise. I walked along beside the surf with great enjoyment, till thinking I was now got far enough to the south, I took the cover of some thick bushes and crept warily up the ridge of the spit. Behind me was the sea, in front the anchorage. The sea breeze, as though it had the sooner blown itself out by its unnatural violence, was already at an end. It had been succeeded by light, variable airs from the south and southeast, carrying great banks of fog, and the anchorage under lee of Skeleton Island lay still and laden as when we first entered it. The Hispaniola, in that unbroken mirror, was exactly betrayed from the trunk to the waterline, the Jolly Roger hanging from her peak. Alongside lay one of the gigs, silver in the stern sheets. Him I could always recognize, while a couple of men were leaning over the stern bulwarks, one of them with a red cap, one very rogue that I had seen some hours before striding legs upon the palisade. Apparently they were talking and laughing, though at that distance, upward of a mile, I could, of course, hear no word of what was said. All at once there began the most horrid, unearthly screaming, which at first startled me badly, though I had soon remembered the voice of Captain Flint, and even though I could make out the bird by her bright plumage, as she sat perched upon her master's wrist. Soon after, the jolly boat shoved off and pulled for shore, and the man with the red cap and his comrade went below by the cabin companion. Just about at the same time, the sun had gone down behind the spyglass, and as the fog was collecting rapidly, it began to grow dark in earnest. I saw I must lose no time if I were to find the boat that evening. The white rock, visible enough above the brush, was still some 1/8 of a mile further down the spit, and it took me a goodish while to get up with it, crawling often on all fours among the scrub. Night had almost come when I laid my hands on its rough sides. Right below it there was an exceedingly small hollow of green turf, hidden by banks and a thick underwood about knee-deep, and that grew there very plentifully. And in the centre of the dell, sure enough, a little tent of goatskins, like what the gypsies carry about them in England. I dropped into the hollow, lifted the side of the tent, and there was Ben Gunn's boat. Homemade, if ever anything was homemade. A rude, lopsided framework of tough wood, and stretched upon that covering of goatskin, with the hair inside. The thing was extremely small, even for me, and I was hardly imagine that it could have floated with a full-size man. There was one thought set as low as possible, a kind of stretcher in the bows, and a double paddle for propulsion. Goodish while. I thought I heard you say British while. A British while. It's very different to say an American or Canadian while. Or maybe even a French while. There's his tiny little boat. I had not seen a crackle, such as the ancient Britons made, but I have seen one since, and I can give you no fair idea of Ben Gunn's boat than by saying it was the first and the worst coracle ever made by man. An Italian one will be going on for months. But the great advantage of the coracle it certainly possessed, for it was exceedingly light and portable. Well, now that I found the boat, you would have thought I had enough of truancy. I had enough truancy for one. That's truancy, like naughtiness in school, truancy. Truantry. I'm sitting cross-legged and holding my head up with my hands, looking at you with cute white eyes as you read. Okay, pat you on the head, Rick. Head pats for you, Richter. You listen to story time, okay? Crackle. Crackle. What was I up to? T for one. Caracle. I'm trying. I'm on caracle. Not crackle. Carbuncle. No carbuncles, just caracles. Tiny baby weed boats. Dinkelberg. Hispanolias. But tiny. Hispanolia. Caracal. Hispanolia. Caracal. Arbuckle. Hello, Kevlar! I forgot to open the thing that you need for that. I'm sorry. I will open it. I forgot to open the product. Wait, head pats don't work for my 3D model. I do apologize, but I do appreciate the head pats. John Arbuncle. Indubitably. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have any really triggers for the 3D model, unfortunately. But, you know, the oh, come on, brain. You know the words, you just have to find them. It's the thought that counts! That's the words I was trying to find! We appreciate it. We have the vibes of head pats. Intention, yeah. Increasingly aggressive head pats, member. I don't want you to hurt my head. Please don't do very aggressive head pats. We don't want that. Bonk! No! Ow! Gross. Why would you do that? Gross. Oh my, gross. The vibes are there. I tried with emotes to make a head pat. That works. I pat myself. Pat, pat, pat. We can head pat ourselves. Now I'm really lost as well. I'm gonna start from here, even though I know we've read that bit. Well, now that I found the boat, you would have thought that I had enough of truantry for once. But in the meantime, I had taken another notion and become so obstinately fond of it that I would have carried it out. I believe in the teeth of Captain Smollett himself. This was to ship out under the cover of night, cut the Hispaniola adrift, and let her go ashore where she fancied. I had quite made up my mind that the mutineers, after their repulse of the morning, had nothing nearer their hearts than to up anchor and away to sea. This, I thought, it would be a fine thing to prevent, and now that I had seen how they left their watchman unprovided with a boat, I thought it might be done with little risk. Down I sat to wait for darkness, and I made a heavy meal of biscuit. I was a knight out of 10,000 for my purpose. The fog had now buried all heaven, as the last rays of daylight dwindled and disappeared. Absolute blackness settled down on Treasure Island, and when at last I shouldered the Carucal, shouldered the Carucal, I lost it, I went to go look for it. And groped my way stumbling out of the hollow where I had supped. There were but 2 points visible on the whole anchorage. One was the great fire on shore, by which the defeated pirates lay carousing in the swamp. The other, a mere blur of light upon the darkness, indicated the position of the anchored ship. She had swung round to the ebb. What would that be? Would just like a little boat just go across the screen like I don't know. Maybe. Her bow was now towards me. The only lights on board were in the cabin, and what I saw was merely a reflection on the fog of the strong rays that flowed from the stern window. The ebb had already run some time, and I had to wade through a long belt of swampy sand, where I sank several times above the ankle, before I came to the edge of the retreating water, and wading a little way in, and with some strength and dexterity, set my coracle, it sounded like crackle again, kneeled down on the surface. Let's go cut the boat out. Just show up on a tiny little boat. I wish I was I coded things, but this is different, and I feel like I should learn it, because wouldn't it be so cool if you did that, and then a little boat with your name popped up, and just disappeared? Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be amazing? I need to get more amazing. So there needs to be more triggers for the 3D model, because all my triggers based off VTube Studio, which is the 2D model only. I want to do some science. Some streamer science. Again. Anyway. Chapter 23! The ebb tide runs. Oh, it's gonna make me say Karukal. Need to get more amazing. I'll always need to get more amazing. I want to hit you with technology. I mean, like I said, the most impressive and most inspiring VTuber to me is the Crackle. Send in the Crackle! Sounds like Kraken, doesn't it? Send in the Crackle! And maybe just tentacles pop up. Probably set that up, actually. That one's not too bad. That would be very similar to the This Is Fine, because that's a VTube Studio specific thing. Release the Crackle! Crackle, 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 crackle! The Crackle, as I had ample reason to know before I was done with, was a very safe boat for a person of my height and weight, both buoyant and clever in a sea way, but she was the most cross-grained, lopsided craft to manage. Do as you please, she always made more leeway than anything else, and turning round and round was the manoeuvre she was best at. Even Ben Gunn himself has admitted that she was queer to handle till you knew her way. Oh no, it's a gay boat! She only knows how to go one way, not the other. Certainly I did not know her way. She turned in every direction but the one I was bound to go. For the most part of the time we were broadside on, and I was very sure I never should have made the ship at all but for the tide. By good fortune, paddle as I pleased, the tide was still sweeping me down, and there lay the Hispaniola right in the fairway, hardly to be missed. Ladies and gentlemen, for your consideration, the Crackle! If only she was bi, then she could go both ways. Exactly! She's either straight or she's gay, but we need her to be bi. But she was born that way. She can't help it. First she loomed before me like a blot of something yet blacker than darkness, and her spars and hull began to take shape. And the next moment, as it seemed, for the farther I went, the brisker grew the current of the ebb. I was alongside her hawser, and had laid hold. Severe case of woke. Nope, she needs a worse case of woke. She's not woke enough! Lady Gaga made her that way. She did! The hawser was as taut as a bowstring, and the current so strong she pulled upon the anchor. All round the hull in the blackness the ripping current bubbled and chattered like a little mountain stream. One cut with my seagully and the Hispaniola would go humming down the tide. So far so good. But it next occurred to my recollection that a taut hawser suddenly cut is a thing as dangerous as kicking a horse. 10 to 1, if I was so foolhardy as to cut the Hispaniola from her anchor, I and the Crackle I still can't say it. I'm trying. Caracal would be knocked clean out of the water. This brought me to a full stop, and if fortune had not again particularly favoured me, I should had to abandon my design. But the light airs, which had been blowing from the south-east and south, had hauled round after nightfall into the south-west, Just while I was meditating, a puff came, caught the Hispaniola, and forced her up into the current. And to my great joy, I felt the hawser slacken in my grasp, and the hand by which I held it dip for a second under water. With that, I made my mind up, took out my gully, opened it with my teeth, and cut one strand after another, till the vessel swung only by two. Then I lay quiet, waiting to sever the last, when the strains should be once more lightened by a breath of wind. All this time I had heard the sound of loud voices from the cabin, but, to say the truth, my mind had never been so entirely taken up with other thoughts that I had scarcely given ear. Now, however, when I had nothing else to do, I began to pay more heed. One I recognised for the coxswain's, Israel Hands. That had been Flint's gunner in former days. The other was, of course, my friend of the red nightcap. Both men were plainly the worse of drink, and they were still drinking, for even while I was listening, one of them, with a drunken cry, opened the stern window, and threw out something which I divined to be an empty bottle. But they were not only tipsy, it was plain that they were furiously angry. Oaths flew like hailstones, and every now and then there came forth such an explosion as I thought was sure to end in blows. But each time the quarrel passed off, and the voices grumbled lower for a while, until the next crisis came and in its turn passed away without result. On shore I could see the glow of the great campfire burning warmly through the shore-side trees. Someone was singing a dull, old, droning sailor's song, with a drool and a quaver at the end of every verse, and seemingly no end to it at all, but the patience of the singer. I had heard it on the voyage more than once, and remembered these words, "But one man of a crew alive, what put to sea with 75. And I thought it was dirty, rather too dolefully appropriate for a company that had met such cruel losses in the morning. But indeed, from what I saw, all these buccaneers were as callous as the sea they sailed on. At last the breeze came, the schooner sidled, and drew near in the dark. I felt the hawser slacken once more, and with a good, tough effort, cut the last fibres through. The breeze had but little action on the crackle, and I was almost instantly swept against the bows of the Hispaniola. At the same time, the schooner began to turn upon her heel, spinning slowly end for end across the current. I wrought like a fiend, for I expected every moment to be swamped, and since I found I could not push the crackle directly off, I now shoved straight astern. At length I was clear of my dangerous neighbour, and just as I gave the last impulsion, my hands came across a light cord that was trailing overboard across the stern bulwarks. Instantly I grabbed it. Why I should have done so, I can hardly say. I was, at first, mere instinct, but once I had it in my hands, I found it fast, curiously, and began to get the upper hand, and I determined I should have one look through the cabin window. He's a curious little shit, I guess. Probably should cut his losses and go home at this point, but I guess that would be boring. I pulled in hand over hand on the cord, and when I judged myself near enough, rose at infinite risk to about half my height, and thus commanded the roof of a slice of the interior of the cabin. By this time, the schooner and her little consort were gliding pretty swiftly through the water. Indeed, we had already fetched up level with the campfire. The ship was talking, as sailors say, loudly, treading the innumerable ripples with the incessant weltering splash, and until I got my eye above the window-sill, I could not comprehend why the watchman had taken no alarm. One glance, however, was sufficient, and it was only one glance that I durst take from that unsteady skiff. It showed me Hans and his companions locked together in a deadly wrestle, each with a hand upon the other's throat. Too busy fighting among themselves! Wonderful. Now kiss! Look, they're so close to kissing! They should just kiss! Let me show you closer. I want to show you closer. Look at them! Look at them smooching! He thinks that maybe Jimmy's just that young. He thinks that they're wrestling. This is what he thinks they're doing, but it's not. In fact, this is something his innocent eye shouldn't see, so we shouldn't tell him that this isn't fighting, that he is seeing. Too young to recognize pirate smooches. Yeah, he's too innocent. He's too sweet and innocent to recognize these smooches. He thinks they're fighting to the death. They're just into that shit. I dropped upon the thought again, none too soon, for I was near overboard. The real treasure with the smooches we had along the way. I could see nothing for the moment but these two furious and crimsoned faces swaying together under the smoky lamp. Oh my god! That sounds dodgy! Let me read that again! These two furious and crimsoned faces swaying together under the smoky lamp. Oh my! So romantic for no reason. I shut my eyes to let them grow once more familiar with the darkness. It's too much for his innocent eyes. Jimerthy, go back to your boat and go back to the stockade. This is too much for you. Way of the pirate. Yes. The endless ballad had come to an end. The endless ballad of violent moans, potentially. I didn't know this was a BL. Some of that lusty Arconia main action, yes it is! Had come to an end at last, and the whole diminished company about the campfire had broken into the chorus as I heard so often. 15 men on a dead man's chest. Yo ho ho and a bottle of rum. Drink and the devil had done for the rest. Yo ho ho and a bottle of rum. They were ahead of their times. True visionary. The classic BL. Everything is a BL if you misunderstand it enough. Heck yeah, it is. I was just thinking how busy Drink and the devil were at that moment in the cabin of the Hispaniola, when I was surprised by the sudden lurch of the coracle. At the same moment, she yawned sharply and seemed to change her course. The speed, in the meantime, had strangely increased. I opened my eyes at once. All round me were little ripples, combing over with a sharp, bristling sound and a slightly phosphorescent. The Hispaniola herself, a few yards in whose wake I was still being whirled along, seemed to stagger in her course, and I saw her spars toss a little against the blackness of the night. Nay, as I looked longer, I made sure she also was wheeling to the southward. That's my favourite BL is King Lear. They were betting on a resurgence in the future BL market. I think so. Of course. Resurgence? You mean it went away? BL's always been here. Forever looming. The Yowie hands will never be defeated. I glanced over my right shoulder and my heart jumped against the ribs. There, right behind me, was the glow of the campfire. The current had turned at right angles, sweeping round along with it. The tall schooner and the little dancing coracle, ever quickening, ever bubbling higher, ever muttering louder. It went spinning through the narrows for the open sea. Suddenly the schooner in front of me gave a violent yaw, turning perhaps through 20 degrees, and almost at the same moment one shout followed another from on board. I could hear feet pounding on the companion ladder, and I knew that the two drunkards had last been interrupted in their quarrel and awakened to a sense of their disaster. Do they call him Israel Hands because he's got Yowie hands? Yes, now they do. Israel Yowie Hands. Perfect. I lay down flat in the bottom of that wretched skiff and devoutly recommended my spirit to its maker. And at the end of the stairs, I made sure we must fall into some bar of raging breakers, where all my troubles would be ended speedily. And though I could perhaps bear to die, I could not bear to look upon my fate as it approached. So I must have lain for hours, continually beaten to and fro upon the billowing, and now and again wetted with flying sprays, and never ceasing to expect death at the next plunge. Gradually weariness grew upon me. A numbness on occasional stupor fell upon my mind, eventually, in the midst of my terrors, until sleep at last supervented me. And in my sea-tossed Kuroko, I lay and dreamed of home and the old Admiral Benbow. The cruise of the It is one little guy boat. It was broad day when I awoke. Broad day, not a broad day. I can read. I swear. It was broad day when I awoke and found myself tossing at the southwest end of Treasure Island. The sun was up, but was still hid from me behind the great bulk of the spyglass, which on this side descended almost to the sea in formidable cliffs. Hall Bowline Head and Miss Enpent Mast Hill. Miss Enmast. Hello, Aidan, welcome. Were at my elbow, the hill bare and dark, the head bound with cliffs 40 or 50 feet high, and fringed with great masses of fallen rock. I was scarce a quarter of a mile to seaward, and it was my first thought to paddle in and land. That notion was soon given over. Almost among the fallen rocks the breakers spouted and bellowed, loud reverberations, heavy sprays, flying and falling, succeeded one another from second to second, and I saw myself, if I ventured nearer, dashed to death upon the rough shore, or spending my strength in vain to scale the bleating crags. I'm not a Genshin Impact character. I'm in my adventuring outfit for my pirate adventure. It's very important. I'm theming myself. Nor was all that all, for crawling together on the flat tables of rock or letting themselves drop into the sea with loud reports. I beheld huge slimy monsters, soft snails as it were, of incredible bigness, 2 or 3 score of them together, making the rocks to echo with their barkings. Yeah. 5 stars. Not even 2 minutes into my return, you're already dropping lore on me. Yeah, this outfit specifically was funded by the subathon. You guys got to the dress up briny section of the subathon and we all had a vote on what outfits to pick up. And this was one of them. So this is thanks to you guys that I can look so fashionable. I have understood since that they were sea lions, and entirely harmless, but the look of them added to the difficulty of the shore, and the high running of the surf was more than enough to disgust me of that landing place. I felt willing, rather, to starve at sea than to confront such perils. Oh lordy. Not the big snails. That's really interesting to describe sea lions as big snails. Subathon? Subathon's something like Twitch tends to do and YouTube does it too. You could do these things. In the meantime, I had better chances, I suppose, before me. North of the whole bowline head, the land runs in a long way, leaving at low tide a long stretch of yellow sand. You did not know? Okay, I will explain. A subathon is like a event streamers do, where if you like donate or you become a YouTube member or a Twitch sub or anything like that, you like add time onto the stream, so the stream can theoretically go on forever as long as people keep giving money, basically. It's a way that the streamer can kind of raise a big sum of money, be it for charity or maybe they just need a bit of money themselves. But that's the explanation. So you are aware. Education! No new lore drops, I don't think. No, I tend to do lore mostly in October. Kinda like this, yeah! And you got the Katarina book suggestion. Absolutely wonderful. This is my favorite. One of my favorite animes is based off that light novel, and it's just so good. We have a bi harem, and she just is so happy all the time, and she makes everyone else's lives happy. That's my power fantasy. Is October. I tend to do like weird things around Halloween, so I'd say lore drops tend to happen in October. That's a long way away. Yeah, it is. I can't be dropping lore all the time. Gotta make it special. You are my special. You read that? It's so good. It's one of my favorites. I love it. I love the fluff. I love the idea that I can accidentally make everyone's lives better. That's what I want in my life. That's what I hope my streams achieve. Katarina energy. North of the whole bowline head, the land runs a long way, leaving at low tide a long stretch of yellow sand. To the north of that, again, there comes another cape, Cape of the Woods, as it was marked upon the chart, buried in all green pines which descended into the margin of the sea. I remembered what Silver had said about the current and sets north along the whole west coast of Treasure Island, and seeing from my position that I was already under its influence, I preferred to leave the whole bowline head behind me and reserve my strength for an attempt to land upon the kinder-looking Cape of the Woods. You know, I've been cooking up some ideas for YouTuber theory episodes while you've been away. Nice. This is Treasure Island. This is about some pirates. Gay pirates. It's been a little gay. Or what we're choosing to interpret as gay. That's much is for sure. So a guy called Jim Hawkins, he and his parents are running in. A pirate comes in there and he gets murdered. But in his chest is a map to his treasure! And they go to get this treasure, but half the crew has mutinied against them. And now he has gone to cut the rope on the big boat so that they can't use the big boat to get away. And now he's trying to survive because he's in this tiny little dinghy. And it's very scary for him because it's a tiny little dinghy and it's very, very rickety. And he's trying to find a way to get out of the dinghy without, like, crashing into the island and dying. That is a vague summary of what we're up to. And he's like 6. I don't think he's 6. He's young, but I think he's at least a teenager. There was a great smooth swell upon the sea, the wind blowing steady and gentle from the south. There was no contrariety between that. 10 is not a teenager. 13 is at least is a teenager. That's the first number with teen in it. So it's a teenager. That's preteen. To be fair, it never does say how old he is. To be fair. So we don't know. He's a child, we know that much. There was no contrariety between that. Hello, howdy! Welcome! And the current and the billows rose and fell unbroken. Had it been otherwise, I must long ago have perished. But, as it was, it is surprising how easily and securely my little and light boat could ride. Often I still lay at the bottom and keep no more than an eye above the gunwale. I would see a big blue summit heaving close above me, yet the coracle would but bounce a little, dance as if on springs, and subside on the other side into the trough as lightly as a bird. Every Pirate of the Caribbean movie. Every Pirate of the Caribbean movie is inspired by this shit at some point, probably. I began after a little to grow very bold, and sat up to try my skill at paddling, but even a small change in the disproportion of the weight will produce violent changes in the behaviour of the coracle. My hands have movement. I can stand up and do a little bit of movement, but my legs still aren't gonna quite do what I want them to. But we have full hand range here. So hello, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can't touch my face though, which is... It's still awkward in places. But it's great. I keep losing where I am. Something about violent. There we go. And I had hardly moved before the boat, giving up at once her gentle dancing movement, ran straight down a slope of water, so steep that it made me giddy, and struck her nose with a spout of spray deep into the side of the next wave. I was drenched and terrified, and fell instantly back into my old position, whereupon the coracle seemed to find her head again, and led me as softly as before among the billows. It was plain she was not to be inferred with, and at that rate, since I could in no way influence her course, what hope had I of reaching land? I began to be horribly frightened, but I kept my head. For all that, first moving with all care, I gradually bailed out the coracle with my sea cap. Then, getting my eye once more above the gunwale, I set myself to study how it was she managed to slip so quietly through the rollers. I found each wave, instead of the big, smooth, glossy mountain it looks from shore or from a vessel's deck, was for all the world like a range of hills on dry land, full of peaks and smooth places and valleys. The coracle, left to herself, turning from side to side, threaded, so to speak, her way through these lower parts, and avoided the steep slopes and higher, toppling summits of the wave. Well now, I thought I to myself, it is plain I must lie where I am and not disturb the balance. But it is plain also that I can put the paddle over the side, and from time to time, in smooth places, give her a shove or two towards land. No sooner thought upon than done. There I lay on my elbows in the most terrifying attitude, and every now and again gave a weak stroke or two to turn her head to shore. Slip of water. Yep, this might not be to your tastes, I will admit that. This is classic literature, written way before anyone, myself and this chat, is born. It does hit differently when we're older, and to me especially, it's the type of language and how it's changed in the years really fascinates me. No, I've done really well. I'm gonna get there, don't you worry. I read like 9 books this week, so it's all good. We're gonna get there. Me reading Edgar Allan Poe in 5th grade. Some of us are built different. It's okay. But I think some of us are built different. Some of us are built just like nerds and just want to read the weird shit when we're kids. I didn't either. 9 books in a week is pretty good. Shush you. I'm gonna do it. I'll show you. It was very tiring and slow work, yet I did visibly gain ground, and as we drew near the cape of the woods, though I saw I must infallibly miss that point, I had made some 100 yards of easting. I was, indeed, close in. I could see the cool green treetops swaying together in the breeze, and I felt sure I should make the next promontory without fail. It was high time, for I now began to be tortured with thirst. The glow of the sun from above, its thousandfold reflection from the waves, the sea water that fell and dried upon me, caking my very lips with salt, combining to make my throat burn and my brain ache. The sight of the trees so near at hand had almost made me sick with longing, but the current had soon carried me past the point, and as the next reach of the sea opened out, I beheld a sight that changed the nature of my thoughts. Right in front of me, not 30 fanfics a week, no. You'll never know what fanfics I read, because fanfictions do not get counted, purely because I don't want to publicly write down what fanfics I have read. But I haven't read a fanfic in a while, I won't lie. Also, no! Well, sometimes. I won't lie. Sometimes. Sonic, Bleach, Genshin. Sometimes. You shouldn't, Aiden! There's nothing wrong with fanfiction! Fanfiction is not all, like, lewd. Some of it's wholesome. Like, I tend to read the more wholesome stuff. I like the found family stuff, little AUE things. I mean, the best fan fiction at the moment for me is post Sonic 3 movie where we get domestic Shadow. Shadow baby learning to live life, and it is good and wholesome and we love it. Doesn't mean you can't still get PDCs. Fair enough. But that's the best fix. The best fix of the found family hurt comfort fanfics. Yeah, I once wrote a fanfic where Sailor Moon teamed up with Indiana Jones to find space Nazis, and it was girl. That sounds amazing! What are you on about? I read a good in progress one that was Halo and Mass Effect crossover. Ooh, does have obvious Halo bite. There always is. Like, I was reading one that had like the Bat family in from like Batman and stuff, but it was clearly someone who had only read Wayne Family Adventures and never actually any Batman stuff. It was really funny. There was like DC stuff, but it was like, no, the Bat family. I read a fanfic where Sonic and his friends went to the Murder Drones universe. Oh, I see where the PTSD would come from. Yes, I see. That's okay. Everyone reads a weird one at some point. You're just like, what did I just read? And sometimes you're just not prepared for what comes out of fanfiction. You gotta be so careful. You gotta read those tags. Gotta make sure you read what it's about before you get in there. It was actually pretty good though, but that's not what I was talking about from PTSD. No. I have not seen it. I don't know what is it. Is it like a little YouTube series or like a TV series or something? Not heard of Murder Drones. Is it the modern equivalent of Happy Tree Friends? She says modern. The most recent version. It's made by Glitch Productions, the same people who made SMG4, as if I know what that is either. It's all very good, gotta say. Naruhodo. Ace Combat has good comedy fanfic. That was Ace Comedy 7, but from the perspective of the backseater of two-person planes, which aren't characters in the game. Oh my god, that sounds amazing. Love it. 10 out of 10. The sight of trees so near at hand had almost made me sick with longing, but the current had soon carried me past the point, and as the next reach of sea opened out, I beheld a sight that changed the nature of my thoughts. Right in front of me, not half a mile away, I beheld the Hispaniola under sail. I made sure, of course, that I should be taken, but I was so distressed for want of water, and scarce knew where to be glad or sorry at the thought, and long before I had come to a conclusion, surprise had taken entire possession of my mind, and I could do nothing but stare and wonder. The Hispaniola was under her mainsail and 2 jibs, and the beautiful white canvas shone in the sun like snow or silver. When I first sighted her, all her sails were drawing. She was lying a course about northwest. I presumed the men on board were going round the island on their way back to the anchorage. Presently, she began to fetch more and more to the westward, so that I thought they had sighted me and were going about in chase. At last, however, she fell right into the wind's eye, and was taken dead back, and soon there a while helpless, with their sails shivering. Clumsy fellows, said I, they must still be drunk as owls. And I thought how Captain Smollett would have set them skipping. Meanwhile, the schooner gradually fell off and filled again upon another track. sailed swiftly for a moment or so, and brought up once more dead in the wind's eye. Again and again this was repeated, to and fro, up and down, north, south, east, and west. The Hispaniola sailed by swoops and dashes, and at each repetition ended as she began, with idly flapping canvas. It became plain to me that nobody was steering, and if so, where were the men? Either they were dead drunk or had deserted her, I thought, and perhaps if I could get on board, I might return the vessel to her captain. The current was bearing the coracle and schooner southwards at an equal rate. Southward, yeah. Definitely drunk, probably drunk. As for the latter's sailing, it was so wild and intermediate, as she hung each time so long in irons, that she certainly gained nothing, if she did not even loose. If only I dared to sit up and paddle! I made sure that I could overhaul her. The scheme had an air of adventure that inspired me, and the thought of the water breaker inside the fore companion doubled my growing courage. Up I got, was welcomed almost instantly by another cloud of spray, but this time stuck to my purpose as I set myself with all my strength and caution to paddle after the unsteered Hispaniola. Once I shipped a sea so heavy that I had to stop and bail, with my heart fluttering like a bird, but gradually I got into the way of the thing and guided my coracle among the waves, with only now and then a blow upon her bows and a dash of foam in my face. I was now gaining rapidly on the schooner. I could see the brass glisten on the tiller as it banged about, and still no soul appeared upon her decks. I could not choose, but supposed she was deserted. If not, the men were lying drunk below. There where I might batten them down, perhaps, and do what I choose with the ship. For some time she had been doing the worst thing possible for me, standing still. She headed nearly due south, yawning, of course, all the time. Each time she fell off, her sails partly filled, and these brought her in a moment right to the wind again. I have said this was the worst thing possible for me, for helpless as she looked in this situation, with the canvas cracking like cannon, and the blocks trundling and banging on the deck, she still continued to run away from me, not only with the speed of the current, but by the whole amount of her leeway, which was naturally great. But now, at last, I had my chance. The breeze fell for some seconds, very low, and the current gradually turning her. The Hispaniola revolved slowly round her centre, and, at last, presented me her stern. With the cabin window still gaping open, and the lamp over the table still burning on into the day, the mainsail hung drooped like a banner. She was stock still, but for the current. For the last little while I had even lost, but now, redoubling my efforts, I began once more to overhaul the chase. Jimerthy never knows how worse it can get. I was not 100 yards from her when the wind came again in a clap. She filled on the port tack, and was off again, stooping and skimming like a swallow. My first impulse was one of despair, but my second was toward joy. Round she came till she was broadside on to me. Round still she had covered a half, and then 2/3, and then 3/4 of the distance that separated us. I could see the waves boiling white under her forefoot. Immensely tall she looked to me from my low station in the coracle. And then, of a sudden, I began to comprehend. I had scarce time to think, scarce time to act and save myself. I was on the summit of one swell when the schooner came stooping over the next. The bowsprit was over my head. I sprang to my feet and leaped, stamping the coracle under water with one hand. I caught the jib boom, while my foot was lodged between the stay and the brace. And as I still clung there, panting, a dull blow told me that the schooner had charged down upon and struck the coracle, and I was left without retreat on the Hispaniola. Da 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 da! I strike the Jolly Roger. Okay. Chapter 25. I strike the Jolly Roger. I had scarce gained a position on the bowsprit when the flying jib flapped and filled upon the other tack. With a report like a gun, the schooner trembled to her keel under the reserves, but next moment, the other sails still drawing, the jib flapped back again and hung idle. Do you think we can strike the Jolly Roger and take over the Finn Library, Brownie? No, definitely not. He's too powerful. The Library Guardian is too powerful, and there are tiny fairies with telekinesis about. I don't want to challenge that. They bring me tea, and I don't want to see what else they can do with it. Definitely not. We can dream, but we will fail. This had nearly tossed me off into the sea, and now I lost no time, crawled back along the bowsprit, and tumbled head foremost on the deck. I was on the lee side of the forecastle, and the mainsail, which was drawing concealed from me in a certain position of the after deck, not a soul was to be seen. The planks, which had not been swabbed since the mutiny, bore the print of many feet, and an empty bottle, broken by the neck, tumbled to and fro like a live thing in the scuppers. Suddenly the Hispaniola came right into the wind. The jibs behind me cracked aloud. The rudder slammed to. The whole ship gave a sickening heave and a shudder, and at the same moment the main boom swung inboard, the sheet groaning in the blocks, and showed me the lee after deck. There were 2 watchmen, sure enough, Redcap on his back, as stiff as a handspike, with his arms stretched like those of a crucifix, and his teeth showing through his open lips. Israel hands propped against the bulwarks, his chin on his chest, his hands lying open before him on the deck, his face as white under its tan as a tallow candle. For a while the ship kept bucking and sliding like a vicious horse, the sails filling, now on tack, and now on another, and the other booms swinging to and fro till the mast groaned aloud under the strain. It's the yow. They did it so hard they died. Oh my. Now and again there would come a cloud of light sprays over the bulwark, and a heavy blow of the ship's bows against the swell. So much heavier weather was made of it by this great-rigged ship than by my home-made lopsided coracle, now gone to the bottom of the sea. At every jump of the schooner, Redcap slipped to and fro, but what was ghastly to behold, neither his attitude nor his fixed teeth-disclosing grin was any way disturbed by this rough usage. At every jump, too, Hans appeared still more to sink into himself, and settle down upon the deck, his feet sliding over ever the farther out, and the whole body canting towards the stern, so that his face became, little by little, hid from me, and at last I could see nothing beyond his ear and the frayed ringlet of one whisker. At the same time, I observed around both of them splashes of dark blood upon the planks, and began to feel sure they had killed each other in their drunken wrath. While I was thus looking and wondering, in a calm moment, when the ship was still, Israel Hands turned partly round, with a low moan, writhed himself back to the position in which I had first seen him, the moan which told of pain and deadly weakness, and the way in which his jaw hung open went right to my heart. But when I remembered the talk I had overheard from the apple barrel, all pity left me. I walked aft until I reached the mainmast. "Come aboard, Mr. Hands," I said ironically. He rolled his eyes round heavily, but he was too far gone to express surprise. All he could do was utter one word: "Brandy." It occurred to me there was no time to lose, and dodgingly the boom as it once more lurched across the deck, I slipped aft and down the companion stairs into the cabin. It was such a scene of confusion as you can hardly fancy. All the lock-fast places had been broken open in quest of the chart. The floor was thick with mud where ruffians had sat down to drink or consult after wading in the marshes round their camp. The bulkheads, all painted in clear white and beaded round with gilt, bore a pattern of dirty hands. Dozens of empty bottles clinked together in the corners to the rolling of the ship. Once, one of the doctor's medical books lay open on the table, half of the leaves gutted out, I suppose for pipe lights. It was the midst of all this lamp still cast a smoky glow, obscure and brown as umber. I went into the cellar. All the barrels were gone, and of the bottles a most surprising number had been drunk and thrown away. Certainly, since the mutiny began, not a man of them could ever have been sober. Foraging about, I found a bottle with some brandy left, for Hands, and for myself I rooted out some biscuit, some pickled fruits, and a great bunch of raisins and a piece of cheese. With these I came on deck, but now my own stock behind the rudder head, and well out of the coxswain's reach, went forward to the water breaker and had a good deep drink of water, and then not till then I gave Hans the brandy. He must have drunk a gill before he took the bottle from his mouth. Ah, yay! Thank you so much for the follow. Rosalind Necker. That's a pretty name. Thank you so much. Aye, said he. By thunder, I wanted some of that. I had sat down already in my own corner and begun to eat. Much hurt? I asked him. He grunted, or rather, I might say, he barked. If that doctor was aboard, he said, I'd be right enough in a couple turns. But I don't have no manner of luck, you see. And that's what's the matter with me. For as that swab, he's good, and dead he is, he added, indicating the man with the red cap, who never got a name the whole time. He warn't no seaman anyhow, and where more you have come from. Well, said I, I've come aboard to take possession of this ship, Mr. Hands, and you'll please regard me as your captain until further notice. Jimerthy climbs on the boat. I am the captain now. Look at me. I am the captain. He looked at me sourly enough, but said nothing. Some of the colour had come back into his cheeks, though he still looked very sick, and still continued to slip out and settle down as the ship banged about. By the by, I continued, I can't have these colours. Mr. Hands, and by your leave, I'll strike them. Better none these. Pull down the crossbones! Ba-da-ba-da! And you subscribed on YouTube! Thank you so much! Yay! Also, still, very pretty name. 10 out of 10. Again, dodging the boom, I ran to the colour lines, handed down their cursed black flag, and chucked it overboard! Strike 'em down! God save the king, said I, waving my cap, and there's an end to Captain Silver. He watched me keenly and slyly, his chin all the while on his breast. I reckon, he said at last, I reckon, Captain Hawkins, you'll want kind of what to get ashore now. S'pose we talks. Why, yes, says I. With all my heart, Mr. Hands, say on. And I went back to my meal with a good appetite. This man, he began, nodding feebly at the corpse. O'Brien wears... Hey, he has a name! And he's from Ireland! He's a red cat from Ireland, of course he is. That makes sense. He was a fairy the whole time. O'Brien were his name. A rank Islander. This man and me got the canvas on her, meaning for to sail her back. Well, he's dead now, and he is as dead as Blige. And who's to sail this ship? Not a leprechaun, a redcap, very different. A redcap is a very violent little fairy, and the cap is red because when they kill someone, they take their cap off and they soak it in the blood of the person they have killed. That is how redcaps have redcaps. Is violent. Or is that Scottish, not Irish? I do get confused with their mythologies, and I do apologise if anyone watches this and knows better than I do. Yeah. And who's to sail this ship? I don't see. Without I gives you a hint. You ain't that man, as far as I can tell. Now look here. You gives me food and drink, and an old scarf or an handkerchief to tie up my wound, you do, and I'll tell you how to sail her. And that's about square all round, I take it. It was a rain puff. I'll tell you one thing, says I. I'm not going back to Captain Kidd's anchorage. I mean to get into North Inlet and beach her quietly there. To be sure you did, he cried. Why, I ain't such an infernal lubber after all. And I see, can't I? I've tried my fling, I have. And I've lost, and it's you as the wind o' me, North Inlet. Why, I am no choice, not I. I'd help you sail her up to Execution Dock, by thunder, so I would. Yes, you don't want to run into a redcap. Bad times, bad times. Well, as it seems to me, there was some sense in this. We struck our bargain on the spot. In 3 minutes I had the Hispaniola sailing easily before the wind along the coast of Treasure Island, with good hopes of turning the northern point ere noon, and beating around as far as North Inlet before high water, when we might beach her safely and wait till the subsiding tide permitted us to land. Any drink? Then I lashed the tiller and went below to my own chest, where I got a silk handkerchief of my mother's. With this, and with my aid, Hans bound up the great bleeding stab he had received in the thigh, and after he had eaten a little, and had swallowed or two more the brandy, he began to pick up visibly, and sat straighter up, spoke louder and clearer, and looked in every way another man. The breeze served us admirably. We skimmed before it like a bird, the coast of the island flashing by, and the view changing every minute. Soon we were past the high lands and bowling beside low, sandy country sparsely dotted with the wharf pines, and soon we were beyond that again, and had turned the corner of the rocky hill that ended the island on the north. I was greatly elated with my new command, and pleased with the bright, sunshiny weather and these different prospects of the coast. I had now plenty of water and good things to eat, and my conscience, which had smitten me hard for my desertion, was quietened by the great conquest I had made. I should, I think, have nothing left me to desire but for the eyes of the coxswain, as they followed me derisively about the deck, and the odd smile that appeared continually on his face. It was a smile that had in it something of pain and weakness, a haggard old man's smile. But there was, beside that, a grain of derision, a shadow of treachery, in his expression as he craftily watched me at my work. Well, of course, Israel Hands has been one of the most traitorous bastards in this whole series. So that series, book. That's the word I'm looking for. You ever just have words just go poof? I'm having a bad time of it today. My grasp of the English language today is loose at best. Gonna call my next tragic yaoi fic Shadow Treachery. There's probably 1,000 already. Tragic yaoi is very fashionable at the moment. Oi! It's not just because I'm northern. Probably doesn't help though. Chapter 26. The wind serving to us a desire now hauled into the west. We could run so much easier from the northeast corner of the island to the mouth of the North Inlet, only as we had no power to anchor and dared not beach her till the tide had flowed a good deal farther. Time hung on our hands. The coxswain told me how to lay the ship to, and after a good many trials I succeeded, and we both sat in silence over another meal. "Captain," he said at length, with that same uncomfortable smile, "here's my old shipmate, O'Brien. S'pose you was to heave him overboard. I ain't particular as a rule, and I don't take no blame for settling his ash. But I don't reckon him ornamental now, do you? I'm not strong enough, and I don't like the job, and there he lies for me," said I. This is an unlucky ship, this Hispaniola, Jim," he went on, blinking. "There's a power of men being killed in this Hispaniola, a sight of poor seamen dead and gone since you and me took ship to Bristol. I never seen such dirty luck, not I. There was this here O'Brien now. He's dead, ain't he? Well, now, I'm no scholar, and you're a lad as far as I can read and figure. And to put it straight, Do you take it as a dead man is dead for good, or do he come alive again? You can kill the body, Mr. Hands, but not the spirit. You must know that already, I replied. O'Brien there is in another world, and may be watching us. Ah, says he. Well, that's unfortunate. 'Pears as if killing parties was a waste of time. Howsoever, spirits don't reckon for much, and by what I've seen, I'll chance him with the spirits, Jim. And now I've spoken up free, and I'll take it kind if you'd step down into that there cabin and get me shiver me timbers, I can't hit the name on it. Well, you get me a bottle of wine, Jim. Now his brandy's too strong for me head. Now the coxswain's hesitations seemed to be unnatural, and as for the notion of his preferring wine to brandy, I entirely disbelieved it. The whole story was a pretext. He wanted me to leave the deck. So much was plain, but with what purpose could I in no way imagine. His eyes never met mine. They kept wandering to and fro, up and down, now with a look to the sky, now with a flitting glance upon the dead O'Brien. All the time he kept smiling and putting his tongue out in the most guilty, embarrassed manner, so that a child could have told that he was bent on some deception. I was prompt with my answer, however, for I saw where my advantage lay, and that with a fellow so densely stupid I could easily conceal my suspicions to the end. Some wine, I said. Far better. Will you have red or white? Well, I reckon it's about the blessed to be the best same to me. Shit, mate. It's not the same. They taste completely different, he replied. So it's strong and plenty of it. What's the odds? All right, I answered. I'll bring you port, Mr. Hands, but I'll have to dig for it. With that I scuttled down the companion with all the noise I could, slipped off my shoes, ran quietly along the spared gallery, mounted the forecastle ladder, and popped my head after the fore companion. I knew he would not expect to see me there, yet I took every precaution possible, and certainly the worst of my suspicions proved too true. He had risen from his position to his hands and knees, and though his leg obviously hurt him pretty sharply when he moved, for I could hear him stifle a groan, yet it was at a good rattling rate that he trailed himself across the deck. In half a minute he had reached the port scuppers and picked out of a coil of rope a long knife, or rather a short dirk, discoloured to the hilt with blood. Port wine mentioned. Port wine fan in the chat. He looked upon it for a moment, thrusting forth his underjaw, tried the point upon his hand, and then, hastily concealing it in the bosom of his jacket, trundled back again into his old place against the bulwark. This was all I had required to know. Israel could move about. He was now armed, and if he had been at so much trouble to get rid of me, it was plain that I was meant to be the victim. What he would do afterwards, whether he would try to crawl right across the island from North Inlet to the camp across among the swamp, or whether he would fire Long Tom, trusting that his own comrades might come to help him, was, of course, more than I could say. Yet I felt sure that I could trust him in one point, since in that our interests jumped together, and that was the disposition of the schooner. We both desired to have her stranded safe enough in a sheltered place, and so that when the time came, she could be got off again with as little labour and danger as might be. And until that was done, I considered my life would certainly be spared. While I was thus turning the business over in my mind, I had not been idle with my body. I had stolen back to the cabin, slipped once more into my shoes, and laid my hand at a random on the bottle of wine, and now, with this for an excuse, I made my reappearance on the decks. Hans lay as I left him, all fallen together in a bundle, and with his eyelids lowered as though he were too weak to bear the light. He looked up, however, at my coming, knocked off the neck of the bottle like a man who had done the same thing often, and took a good swig with his favourite toast, "Here's luck!" And then he lay quiet for a while, and then, pulling out a stick of tobacco, begged me to cut him a quid. "Cut me a chunk of that," says he, "for I have no knife, liar, hardly strength enough to be as I had. Ah, Jim, I reckon I've misstays. Cut me a quid, as'll likely be the last, lad, for my long home, and no mistake." "Well," said I, "I'll cut you some tobacco, but if I was you, and thought myself so badly, I would go to my prayers like a Christian man." "Why?" said he. "Now you tell me why." "Why?" I cried. "You were asking me just now about the dead. You've broken your trust. You've lived in sin and lies and blood. There's a man you killed lying at your feet this moment, and you ask me why? For God's mercy, Mr. Hans, that's why." I spoke with a little heat, thinking of the bloody dirk he had hidden in his pocket, and designed, in all his ill thoughts, to end me with. He, for his part, took a great draught of the wine, and spoke with the most unusual solemnity. "For 30 years, he said, "I've sailed the seas and seen good and bad, better and worse, fair weather and foul, provisions running out, knives going and what not. Well, now I tell you, I never seen good goodness yet. Good come o' goodness yet. Him as strikes first is my fancy. Dead men don't bite. Them's my views, amen. So be it. And now, you look here," he added, suddenly changing his tone. "We've had about enough foolery. The tide's making good enough by now. You just take my orders, Captain Hawkins, and we'll sail slap in and be done with it." "I ain't done nothing, Jim. I'm just a little guy." "What about that guy you just murdered?" "That's not the point." All told, we had scarce 2 miles to run, but the navigation was delicate. The entrance to the northern anchorage was not only narrow and shoal, but lay east and west, so that the schooner must be nicely handled to be got in. I think I was good, prompt subaltern, and I am sure that Hans was an excellent pilot, for we went about and dodged in, shaving the banks with a certainty and neatness that were a pleasure to behold. Scarcely had we passed the heads before the land closed around us. The shores of North Inlet were as thickly wooded as those of the southern anchorage, but the space was longer and narrower, and more like what in truth it was, the estuary of a river. Right before us, at the southern end, we saw a wreck of a ship in the last stages of dilapidation. It had been a great vessel of 3 masts, but had lain so long exposed to the injuries of the weather that it was hung about with great webs of dripping seaweed, and on the deck of it shore bushes had taken root, and flourished thick with flowers. It was a sad sight, but it showed us that the anchorage was calm. "Now," said Hans, "look there. There's a pet bit for to beach a ship. Fine flat sand, never a cat's paw. Trees all around it, and flowers are blooming like a gardening on that ship." "And once beached," I inquired, "how shall we get her off again?" "Why so?" he replied. "You take a line ashore there on the other side at low water, take a turn about one of them big pines, bring it back, take a turn about the caspan, and lie for the tide. Come high water, all hands'll take and pull upon the line, and off she comes, as sweet as nature. And now, boy, you stand by. We're near the bit now, and she's too much away on her starboard a little. So, steady, starboard, larboard a little, steady, steady." So he issued his commands, which I breathlessly obeyed, till all of a sudden he cried, "Now, my hearty luff!" And I put the helm hard up. Now the Hispaniola swung round rapidly. I ran the stem on the low, wooded shore. The excitement of these last manoeuvres had somewhat interfered with the watch I had kept hitherto, sharply enough upon the coxswain. Even then I was still so much interested in waiting for the ship to touch that I had quite forgotten the peril that hung over my head, and stood craning over the starboard bulwarks and watching the ripples spread wide before the bows. I might have fallen without a struggle for my life, had not a sudden disquietude sided upon me, and made me turn my head. Perhaps I had heard a creak, or seen his shadow moving with the trail of my eye. Perhaps it was an instinct like a cat's, but sure enough, when I looked around, there was Hans, already halfway towards me with the dirk in his right hand. "Oh no, good thing Jimmy has spider senses." We must have both cried out aloud when our eyes met, but while mine was the shrill cry of terror, his was a roar of fury like a charging bulls. Bullies. At the same instant he threw himself forward, and I leapt sideways towards the bows. As I did so, I let go of the tiller, which sprang sharp to leeward, and I think this saved my life, for it struck Hans across the chest and stopped him, for a moment, dead. Before he could recover, I was safe out of the corner where he had me trapped. With all the deck to dodge about just forward of the main mast, I stopped, drew a pistol from my pocket, took a cool aim, though he had already turned and was once more coming directly after me, and drew the trigger. The hammer fell, but there followed neither flash nor sound. The priming was useless with seawater. I cursed myself for my neglect. Why had I not long before reprimed and reloaded my own weapon? Then I should not have been as now, a mere fleeing sheep before this butcher. Wounded as he was, it was wonderful how fast he could move. His grizzly hair tumbling over his face itself was red as a red ensign with his haste and fury. I had no time to try my other pistol, nor indeed much inclination, for I was sure it would be useless. One thing I saw plainly, I must not simply retreat before him, or he would steadily hold me boxed into the bows, as a moment since he had so nearly boxed me in the stern. Once so caught, and 9 or 10 inches of the blood-stained dirk would be my last experience on this side of eternity. I placed my palms against the main mast, which was of a goodish bigness, and waited every nerve upon the stretch. Seeing that I meant to dodge, he also paused, and a moment or two passed in feints on his part, corresponding movements upon mine. It was such a game that I had often played at home about the rocks of Black Hill Cove, but never before, you may be sure, with such a wildly beating heart as now. Still, as I say, it was a boy's game, and though I could not hold my own against an elderly seaman with a wounded thigh, indeed my courage had begun to rise so high that I allowed myself a few daring thoughts on what would be the end of the affair. And while I saw certainly that I could spin out for long, I saw no hope of any ultimate escape. Well, while things stood thus, suddenly the Hispaniola struck, staggered, ground for an instant in the sand, and then, swift as a blow, cantered over the port side till the deck stood at an angle of 45 degrees, and about the puncheon of water splashed onto the scupper holes that lay in a pool between the deck and the bulwark. How long have we got? Oh dear. May have to stop here because we're hitting our 2 hours and I have to go. I'm sorry that we have to leave the protagonist in mortal danger, but we'll find out what happens next Sunday on Sunday Story Time. But for now, that is all I have for you. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Thank you, everyone in chat. Thank you, anyone who lurks. Thank you, anyone who watches the VOD. I really appreciate you coming, and I hope you enjoyed interacting, having fun with my content, no matter which way you decide to do it. We appreciate you. Appreciate you even more. Well, not that we don't appreciate anyone else, I guess. I don't know. But I would also appreciate it if you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel on YouTube if you could. And if you're on Twitch, if you give the channel a cheeky little follow, that'd be lovely. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Find out next time in this episode of Dragon Ball Z. I loved that. I loved those little cliffhanger ending bits. They're so good. The cliffhanger, indubitably. If you have some spare cash and you would like to support a British Vtuber after you've taken care of yourself, obviously, most important, then you can do that multiple ways. You can do my YouTube membership where you get emotes, exclusive stream, Discord channel, and merch discounts. I do need to get my exclusive stream in at some point next week because I haven't done it this month yet because timings are awkward, but I will try get it in next week. Probably Friday next week. It's probably gonna have to be the only day I can get it in. Patreon, where you get short stories, exclusive stream, merch discounts, and free books. That is the Kofi, where if you like my emotes, you can get me to draw said emotes for you via commission. Da, 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 da. Cute girl breaks game. Bo Fury is also wonderful. Was gonna use this to buy groceries. No, you gotta buy groceries first. Dislike. I dislike this comment. Buy your groceries, then support your VTubers. It's very important. Pay your bills, do whatever you need to do, then support your VTubers. That's the healthy way we do things. And last but not least is the merch store, where you can get crochet potatoes, ebooks, first edition copies of the books that I've written, bookmarks, pillows, stickers, and a notebook. Yep, that's the last one. Da, 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 da. Should gotta do taxes. Taxes are also important. Shitty, but important. I will be back tomorrow, probably with some more sorcery. But until then, this is the end of the stream, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. But for now, I had fun. I hope you had fun. This has been Bridie Rose Smith, Line the Forbidden Library. Goodbye.